Hey guys, it's SD, your host of the Life Picks Relationship podcast, where people with all sorts of backgrounds, challenges, and life experience show us how they make their relationship extraordinary.
Hey guys, hope you're having an awesome day and enjoyed the previous episode with Dr. Ryan and the manuals. That was so much fun. It turned out way better than I thought. That we have to do more of them. Honestly, getting it set up took way more work than I thought it would, but because it was so much fun and so much value came out of there, we've got to do it more. So watch out, they're coming soon. For today we have the Executive Director of Jewish Family Services of Greater Charleston and family therapist, Sara Tick. Thank you so much, Sara, for being here. I'm really excited. Let's get straight to it. If somebody wants to have an extraordinary relationship, but they came from a family where their parents were divorced and they didn't have any real good role models, what can they do to still have that great marriage?
That's a great question. So when I meet with individuals or couples who say, I don't really have a role model. My own parents, either didn't have a good relationship or they went through a divorce. What can I do? I always ask, who in your life does have a great relationship that you look up to, whether it's one of your friends, whether it's your grandparents, an aunt or an uncle. If all you really need is to have one great role model of a couple that you see has respect for each other and enjoys each other and loves each other, that's really so important when you're thinking about your own relationship and the kind of relationship that you want to build. So having that role model is key start.
Do you think it's possible without a role model, or you have to make a role model?
So some people say, I come from a long line of really unhealthy relationships and I'm not surrounded by this. And so from there, what you really want to think about are what is the individual's values. So what's important to you? What kind of values do you want to share with a partner? And I always say, pick 3 to 5 non-negotiables, things that that you cannot survive in a relationship without, whether that's trust, great communication, great intimacy. It's a lot of self-reflection about, we think we want all these things from a partner, but when it comes down to the basics and that foundation, what is it that we really, really need? And that makes dating so much easier because you can start to weed out, you don't have my top 3, you're out of here. It will save you time in the long run.
Yeah, always say that. You need your clear list. Until you have your clear list of what is really important for you, like you said, your top 3, what you would like to have, and what is like a big no is not, you're not going to end up getting anywhere. Now, do you think it's good enough for someone to say, okay, my parents didn't have a good relationship, I know what I don't want?
Yeah, well, I think that, our parents are our primary role models. So for better or worse, whether we learn what we do want or what we don't and what not to do, that's a great learning tool in itself. And it can be challenging to say, I saw my parents fight a lot or not speak to each other respectfully, and I don't want to repeat that pattern. So in therapy, a lot of times I'll talk with clients about intergenerational patterns. What is getting passed down to you? What do you want to pass down to if you're going to have children? What are you going to take from your parents? And what are you going to say, that I don't want passed down? This cycle of either trauma, abuse, bad communication, whatever it is, I'm going to stop it with me. And it's this conscious choice. You really have to accept it, acknowledge that it's in your family and it can be passed, whether you mean for it to or not, and actively learn to stop it. So it's not just saying, well, my parents messed up, so I'm not going to do anything that they do. No, think about what did they do right that you really want to value and keep close for your relationship and for your children to see and their children. And having that kind of power, I think it really, it's empowering and it makes you feel like you are in control. You can have the relationship that you want. It's not just something that's happened to you.
Yeah, because I think so many times people say, I'm not going to yell at my kids like the way my mother did, or I'm not going to go and have my kids have an early bedtime the way my father. They have these things, and then later on they end up finding they're doing that specific thing. So if there is something that really wasn't good, and it's they don't want to have that in their relationship, how could they go and really make that switch?
We can never take away a thought or a belief or an action unless we're going to replace it with something in its spot. So if you're not going to do X, Y, or Z, what are you going to do then? And that's where a lot of people get stuck because they'll say, "Well, I don't want to do this," and so they'll try to stop fighting, but then they're like, this, "I don't even know how to communicate. I don't know the skills of what to put in its place." So it's a twofold. And I think that once you kind of figure out, and again, therapy is a great place to do this. What are my choices? What are my options? You might not have ever learned it before in your family. That's really the best way to kind of combat taking something away. You got to place it with something positive.
Yeah, because I think the mind thinks of pictures, right? And there's no picture for a no. So if you say no screaming, it's not like it has like someone screaming and there's like a big X on it. There's just screaming there. There's no way to do that. But if you say like, oh, talking calmly or asking questions so I understand my partner or whatever it is, now your mind is focused on talking calmly. So it doesn't have to go and scream. Now, that could bring us somebody, I'm just like thinking, someone who's working on this and is saying, okay, they're replacing something that they didn't like that their parents did, and they want to do it differently. But obviously, we're all humans and they're going to slip sometimes. How could a person not be too hard on themselves and at the same time make sure that they're getting back onto the path?
I am such a proponent of just do your best. Nobody has got this whole relationship thing figured out. That's why there's so many books, there's so many therapists, there's so many podcasts. We're all a work in progress. And I think setting that expectation of, it's not all or nothing. You don't either have a terrible relationship or you're, in a perfect relationship. We're all in shades of gray, and that's what makes it interesting and fun. And you're with your partner at this point in life to learn lessons and to grow. So I'm all about, when I check in with my clients, what was working this week? Where did we get a little stuck? Let's talk about it. And making it just very normalized because everyone has relationship problems. Celebrities do. All the glossy things we see of everything being perfect in social media, that's not reality. At the end of the day, we're still like waking up in our pajamas, grumpy, and everyone has those days. And that's okay. That's being a person. It keeps it interesting.
Yeah, like imagine we just had like perfect lives. Like wake up every day the same exact time, no problem. Like no such a thing of hitting the snooze button, eat the same breakfast, get to work on time. There's never traffic. We always get there. Walk into life would just be boring. Like in a way, don't get me take this the wrong way, but like COVID was interesting just for the fact that it was like something different and interesting. It was horrible and it did a lot of bad to a lot of people. And I'm not trying to say that I want more of it, but it was just like a change to the people went crazy from it because like they didn't know how to deal with the change. But I love change. And I think that it's just bound to happen. Life would be so boring if we would have the same thing every single day.
Definitely. And so many people, whether it's for relationships or not, they'll come to therapy and just say, I want to be happy. I just want to be happy. And I always have the conversation of, that's not a real thing. No one walks around being happy all the time. Our goal shouldn't maybe be, I want to feel happy. It should be, I want to feel whole. I want to feel everything. I want to know that when I'm having a bad day, that I've experienced those highs of happiness. And that means so much more because I've felt the lows. And that's part of being a human. Like that's the focus. And I think if we take that philosophy to relationships and just say, we're not gonna, if we can strive to be happy at some point every day, but to be sunshine all day every day, I don't know anybody like that. So
first of all, that would be boring. I'm just thinking if you're happy, that means you're never excited because excited is different than happy. I'm just like pointing that out. Okay. Second of all, you won't get the messages that emotions are trying to tell you. There's a reason why you're feeling that, and you won't be able to like redirect your life or learn new things or figure out new things because you're always happy. So you're happy you're having such a low income. Like really now? Okay, maybe you want to go and do something about it to make it better. And emotions aren't a bad thing. People think that they are and that like we always have to be happy and like you said, always sunshine. No. Emotions are just neutral and they're there to tell us something. And we want all of them. Like you said, you want to feel whole. How could someone go and someone who's like in the very like always striving to be happy because we get a lot of that message. I don't know, like raising and this is growing up, school, this culture, like try to be happy and always like the happy mind. How could someone realize that maybe it's better to not always be happy?
Usually if someone will say something along those lines, I'm always very curious and I want to know who taught you that being happy was the most important thing. Where'd you learn that? Because we all learn everything from somewhere. And oftentimes they'll say, oh, well, I'm coming to you from the South. So Southern female culture, it's very important for a lot of women to be very liked and likable. And so they have to pretend to be happy and perfect. And that's part of having a place in society. And they receive great feedback from other people of how sweet your little girl is. And, women in general, we get this a lot, not just women, but just as an example. So when we start to really think, where did I learn this? Why am I benefiting from this? And what's the downside? What am I missing by only pursuing this one path? If you just pursue one track, what have you left on the sideline that might be really valuable? And I think that those are questions that will slowly start to churn and do some self-reflection.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think that it has to be asked more about everything. Like, why are you really, and what are you gonna miss out if you don't do something? Now, everything in life is choices. Yeah, the fact that you're choosing to have the whole experience and not be happy all the time also means that sometimes you'll feel down. That's part of life, and you're choosing that. Okay, sometimes that's going to be that, but then there's benefits to that. I think we want to have everything from everything, and it's sometimes hard to know intellectually, but when it comes actually to making decisions, know that no, if I'm choosing chocolate, I can't have vanilla. It's one or the other, and we have to put it in our brain I'm choosing this, and there's some downsides to it, but it's worth it over that.
Absolutely. It's just about what's important. What do you value the most? And everything, if it follows your values, then you're on the right path.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what about somebody who has been divorced and is now in a relationship and wants to make sure this relationship works without following the same patterns that they had before?
That is the golden question, right? I think that everyone who has gone through a breakup, we all take that time afterwards, hopefully to try and learn and reflect, or at least that's what we're supposed to do. Some people, that might be more challenging than in others. But I really, really, of course, I'm a therapist. I believe in therapy. I think that after a breakup, that is such an important and wonderful opportunity to do some self-reflection about what was learned, what was working about that relationship, what are the takeaways, and what are the things that can't continue on to the next relationship. If you don't take the pause to do that kind of evaluation at the end of a relationship, you are at a very high risk of finding someone who is going to be very similar to your last partner, and you're going to find yourself in the same pattern. And I think especially in your 20s and when you're younger and you're dating, and a lot of times people do date the same person over and over just with a different name and a different job, but you'll find your kind of type. And if it's not working, you got to really stop to put that cog in the wheel and say, what is it that I know is not serving me and not helping me get the relationship and the commitment that I want? So if you take that time to do that reflection, certainly, premarital counseling is great too. I always recommend that, especially for a second marriage. And then that can really help you ask those questions and make sure you're making the best decision for you.
Yeah, on the topic of finding a therapist, especially by doing this podcast, but even before, I've met a lot of therapists who unfortunately are not so good. I've seen a lot of therapists that messed up a lot of people, and I think therapy could be amazing and really life-changing when it's good, or it could be ruin you up really badly. How could a person go and find a therapist that is really good? How do I know it's a good person?
That is such a good question. And, my heart really goes out to people who've had bad experiences with therapists because, as someone who I love my profession, it really hurts me. I feel for them so badly. I think of finding a therapist just like dating. I think it's great to schedule lots of first sessions and find the person that clicks for you. There are so many kinds of therapists. They do different techniques and modalities, and they all have different personalities. We've got people straight out of school to people who've been therapists for 40 years. And depending on who you are and where you feel comfortable, I think that there is somebody for everyone, just like in dating. And it is completely okay. Just because you've been to one therapist, that does not mean you are locked in for life. If it's not the right fit, find the person for you who's going to connect with you, make you feel comfortable, and be your best support.
Yeah, I like that. A lot of first sessions is a really good one. Yeah. Okay, now what if somebody the suggestions you gave before was great for somebody who's looking to get married a second time. If someone's in a second marriage already and they're finding they're doing a certain pattern over and over again. Now, right, you said before, first of all, you want to replace it with something else. But is there anything else they could do to make sure that this marriage is going to be a success?
I guess the first bigger question, I know all your questions I'm answering with questions, I'm such a therapist, is what is a successful marriage, right? So, and everyone answers that differently. There's no right or wrong. But in order to really work on those skills in therapy, we do a lot of listening to what your partner is saying, mirroring it back, and reflecting it. I actually just did that this afternoon with a couple. And because they said, we fight or we disagree. And sometimes we're just not going to come together on a solution. We're just stuck in the mud here, and he doesn't get what I'm saying, and I don't get what he's saying. And what are we supposed to do? And so we practice them each saying their feelings and having the partner next to them reflect what they heard. No judgment, no feedback, just making sure they really understood what their partner was first saying. And then, that in itself kind of slows down an argument, because you have to stop thinking about what you're going to say in response in your head when your partner is talking. And you have to actually listen and start to empathize. And it doesn't mean that you're going to always agree. The point of a conversation is not always going to be wrapped up in a pretty bow. And people say you can't go to bed angry. Like, sometimes you're going to go to bed angry, and that's okay if you feel heard. And that's really what marriage is all about. We can't expect our partner to meet every need or understand every feeling. What we want to look for are empathetic, caring, supportive people who are going to try and put in that effort to really listen. And even if they don't understand or agree, they're going to be there for you. And that really goes a long way in a marriage.
Yeah, it really does. Do you think you're saying that, like, in calm times, like let's say over dinner or something, they should just practice like, I'm feeling this now, and just practice, like literally practice, so that way when it happens at the real time, they could go and do that?
Yes, these are all skills. And just like riding a bike, you don't just hop on a bike and start riding 4 miles. You've got to practice, because when you're really heated and in an emotional place during, an argument or something like that, you're not going to necessarily access the rational part of your mind where you're like, oh, therapist told us to do this exercise. But
yeah, right.
Done it, like, wait a second. Maybe you do. You get extra gold stars if you can do that. But most of the time, if it's something that you incorporate in your day-to-day life and the way that you communicate, one or both partners will get back into that more slowed down pace of, wait, let's just make sure I'm even understanding the message. I need to get out of my own head and take some time to just hear my partner out. I don't have to fix the problem. I don't have to agree with what my partner's saying, but I have to be witness and I have to listen. And if you can just take it in those little baby steps, it completely changes the whole tone of the conversation, and your outcome is much, much better.
Yeah, I like what you just said, in your daily routine, because I thought originally what you meant, like, you practice it once or twice and then you forget about it. But if every single day when you come home from work, you're just going to take a minute to ask the other partner how you're feeling, or over dinner, or sometime when it's calm in your house, you don't want to do it when like things are flying. Then, like you said, it becomes habit. So it's much easier to go and do that. That I really like. Yeah. And you're really going and becoming in tune with your partner. Like, guessing that probably even the times when you're practicing, not just the times when you're heated, you're going to be developing a deeper connection and understanding of your partner. Because all of a sudden, you're consciously every day for even 60 seconds, just listening to your partner and feeling understood. That for sure does something.
It's the most selfless act to just bear witness to another person's experience without asking for anything in return and just being there. I mean, that's super powerful. And it's something like you said, we don't do that enough just day to day. We're coming, we're going, we're on a call, we're in a meeting, but that just quiet listening, even for 1 minute, it really shifts. And I think that people will see such a change in the intimacy that they're having with their partner.
Yeah. And I think that just because we were speaking about earlier of your parents are the biggest role models. And if you come from divorce, it could be hard. You in a relationship, if you have kids, you're the biggest role models for your kids. And you could do the same of just stopping and even for 2 minutes every day, listening to your child, asking them how they're feeling. And besides for them feeling understood, it will give them the skill of how to talk to someone else and do that to someone else, but also how to identify their own emotions. Because I think a lot of people don't really have that skill. Unfortunately, they're just either always happy or always mad, or sad. There's nothing else on their emotion list. And they'll realize that there's array of emotions. And even if you're happy, there's being happy because you're eating an ice cream, and there's being happy because you're at a wedding.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really crazy when you think about all the years we put into our academic education, but our mental and emotional health, that education, if we invested that, especially from childhood on, what that would do for people's quality of life would be a pretty incredible thing.
Yeah, I wonder if therapists would half of them lose their job. I don't think all of them, because there's still going to be much deeper things, but
I just put myself out of business.
Yeah, let's first change the school systems, and then
a little bit would help.
Yeah. Have you seen this own work change affected your own personal life?
Absolutely. So, I mean, my story is I got married in my 20s, and it was a short-lived marriage. We separated after I had my son when he was just 1 year old. And I actually just got remarried to my new husband last month. And now I have a blended family with 3 stepchildren with my son, and living, this new life, and still have a great co-parenting relationship with my son's father. And I like talking about it because I think, number one, divorce needs to be normalized. It is so stigmatized, especially if you have
even though over 50% of people get divorced, it's so stigmatized.
And I do think that our generation will change it. And I think that just the stigma that somehow you failed and this is failure and you have to be ashamed. And you know what? I have a beautiful son. I don't think that any relationship is ever a failure. And I also don't think that all marriages last an entire lifetime, and that's okay. That's just part of life, and we need to talk about it.
Yeah.
We need to give place for people to process and grieve their marriages, and then learn. And then, if they want relationships in the future, there is life after divorce. And I want people to know that too. So absolutely. I mean, being a couples therapist, from being single through getting married, having a son, going through a divorce, getting remarried, it's really fascinating. And I feel like I'm much more empathetic to people who are going through breakups or rebuilding their lives or going through a new marriage, because I've walked that. So it's been a really interesting couple years.
Have people not taken your advice when you were either single or both times, before you were married and after your breakup? They're like, hey, what are you doing?
I think I probably asked that of myself. Are people going to still come see me? It never came up once. I think that if you are a professional and you're a good therapist, that doesn't seem to, your own personal experience doesn't seem to affect your clients unless you allow it. And the reality is, just because I've been single or I've been married or I've been divorced, my experience is not the same as anyone who's sitting on my couch. They have their own complete experience and set of, ideas around it. And so even though I'm probably a little more empathetic because I understand a little bit of what they're going through, I know that my experience is not theirs, and I'm really just there to listen and support them.
That's why you're such a good therapist, because you don't pick us on
Oh,
with them.
me too. I love my job. I really do. It's the best job in the world.
What do you like about it so much?
I love that you can just, before COVID, obviously we're all doing telehealth now, but before COVID, you just, sitting in a room with a couple and just having this uninterrupted, quiet time to reach some understanding, to see a couple who's sitting on opposite ends of the couch when they come in and then they're laughing and I see them leaving holding hands and the mood has shifted in an hour. Like that is just the most amazing feeling. And I love witnessing that. It's just really special.
Yeah. Totally agree with you on that one. Okay. So for our very last question, I want you to tell me, how would you define an extraordinary relationship without using the word love, connection, and intimacy?
Wow, you took all my favorite words. Okay. An extraordinary relationship is built on friendship, respect, and compassion. And it can't exist without those elements being incorporated every day. It's like watering a plant. If you only water it once a week, it's going to shrivel and die. You've got to keep up with it. And I think that the same is true to have a really extraordinary relationship. You've got to put as much energy into it as you do your career, as being a parent, as being a daughter, a friend. It's a priority, and you have to really want it to succeed and give it your all.
Yeah. And I think that when it succeeds, it overflows into every other areas of your life. And when it doesn't,
Absolutely.
It also does. So yes, I love that so, so much. Well, thank you, Sara. This was awesome. I really appreciate talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Did you enjoy that episode? Could you do me a personal favor and subscribe and leave a review? It would mean a lot to me. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.